All right, everyone. Welcome to the Beautiful Thread podcast. I'm your host, Amaryllis. Thank you so much to everyone who's been here before and to anyone new. I appreciate any amount of time that you choose to spend here with me. I like to just imagine that we're sitting down, having a cup of coffee, just talking, talking about our stories, our lives, etc. So it's going to be a little story time today about how I went from 9 to 5 working mom to homeschool mom. And yeah, so if that's something you're interested in, please stick around. Stick around. I'm going to tell you the whole story. Grab your tea, grab your snacks, whatever it is. I have my mom mug, which I feel is very appropriate for today. First of all, let me just actually talk in the mic. That would be helpful. But I got this as a Christmas gift from my oldest, and it's just one of the things. It's like my compulsory mug. I have to have it every time because it's so sentimental. So November of last year, November of 2025. Yeah, you can probably tell, but my voice is a little bit toned down because my young one is napping right now. And if you're a stay-at-homer like me, or even if you have small children, you understand the value of the nap. You understand. November 2025 is when I left my job of 6 years to stay at home. And so just to give you some context, a year before that, not a year, at the top of the year, January 2025, there were some changes at my job. I worked for the government, for the federal government. And so with the change of administration came a lot of changes for the workforce, right? And a lot of you are probably familiar with that here in the Western world, in the US. If you follow the headlines, lots of changes, right? So there were changes that happened that impacted my flexibility and the working environment, which meant that I could no longer work from home and I had to work in the office full-time 5 days a week, which to some may not seem like a big thing, but for us in my household, we didn't have anyone outside of us to pick up our children or watch our children. We didn't have that kind of flexibility. It was just me and my husband, and we were switching off days, and having that flexibility of working from home really helped us both. So from January all the way until November, we were just, and it's the middle of a school year. We have a little bit of a reprieve during the summer when my older one is out of school. But it was a hard thing to do. Anyone out there, single parents, or if it's just you and your spouse and you have no extended family to watch your kids or help you in any way, I just want to say that I understand. Even if you do have people to help you, when you're a parent, it's not like you can just, you can't have somebody just always watching your kid for you, It's just a big responsibility. And so trying to work and have a family and be present is a very difficult thing to do. But when this happened in January, the whole shift, which removed those flexibilities for me, it was like a seed in my heart that was like kind of flowering. I had always had this desire, even before I got this government job. I always had the desire to be with my children at home, but financially it just didn't seem like a thing that we could do, right? And there was a lot of growing I also had to do, and being in this particular job was a very refining process. So, a little glimpse from now at this point, looking at myself in the past, I can see where, God's kindness was in action in preparing me for this role that I have now, because I may not have been ready for it before, right? January happens and this thing in me just shifts. I've always wanted to be at home, Lord. If this is the journey there, please just help me to hear you, help me to know where you want me to go, what you want me to do. I felt it even then, January 2025. So we go through the year, changes upon changes upon changes, right? Impacting our family, less flexibility. My husband is like taking on a lot of the weight of the pickups and the drop offs and having to work at his own job, and it was just a lot. And husband, if you're watching this, I'm eternally thankful for you because he's so patient and just like he was just like willing to do what he had to do in order to make it work, right? How many of you can identify with that part? Just the making it work. Like, and that could be draining sometimes. The making it work part, like we just got to make it work because then yes, we need to be selfless beings, right? As Christians, we need to live selflessly, but then there comes a point where you put so much to the side just to make it work that you can like lose your identity in who you are, lose your joy, your patience. You can just kind of like like burn yourself out, right? Trying to make it work. Like it's a lot. So fast forward to the new school year, right? So out here in the US, well, at least for us here in New Jersey, the school year is from September to June. I know there are some places like Florida where the school year is like August to May or something like that. So here comes June, school lets out. Our oldest is in like a summer camp situation, and things are kind of like, we get a little bit of a breather because we don't have all that, pick up drop off situation. Now, as we're entering the school year, I know that we're going to get back in the grind and the hustle. And I asked my, how do you say? The people I reported to and the people that they reported to, right? Up the management chain. I requested to use my own, if you work, typically when you work in a job, you like accrue what they call PTO. In the government, they call it annual leave. So I had my own annual leave that I earned by working, and I requested that 2 days a week at the end of the day, I will be able to use just 15 minutes of my leave after the workday is done so that I could go pick up my kid from school, right? And it was like the backlash I got from that was so wild. And it was like from that point, from September to November, it was just so much heat. Just for using my own accrued, earned, paid time off, 15 minutes twice a week at the end of the shift so I can pick up my son from school. For the it was for family care, right? And now, every workplace is different. So I would assume that because it had to do with family care, that, not that there would be an exception made for me, but that it wouldn't be so much backlash, right? But it was, and it was like inordinate. It was so strange because it was like, what? Like this was not a problem the year before or the year before that. But now that we had this, all these changes, it was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. So, I ended up in November being given an ultimatum, or at the end of October being given an ultimatum, and being told by management that we can no longer accommodate your requests for 15 minutes at the end of your shift twice a week. And no one's doing me any favors, by the way. It's my own leave, taken out of my own leave bank, right? We can no longer accommodate it, so you have to figure it out. And so I responded to that saying, well, what do you mean figure it out? There's no one else to pick up my child. There's no other way for me to do this. These are the 2 days that my husband cannot do the pickups, and I need to do it. And that was met with just, I don't know, apathy. Maybe that's the word, but I was met with apathy on the verge of like cruelty, right? Like, just this is like nobody cared. Nobody cared. So, and this is not to knock working for the government. This is just my particular experience in my jurisdiction, in my office. So, I had a conversation with my husband after being given that ultimatum, and I said, a lot of things have been pointing towards me coming home. And I said, this is pretty much the last straw. So we prayed about it and we went back and forth. This happened on a Friday. So, and the sovereignty and the kindness of God, right? To work around my work week, this happened on a Friday. So we had the weekend to think about it. So Saturday, we're like kind of going back and forth on, the impact to the household it would be to lose my income for me to come home, but also the benefits. So we're going back and forth on the practicals, right? The logistics of what it would look like. But then we prayed. So we prayed and it was kind of tense. It wasn't tense in the way like that me and my husband were not at odds with one another, but it was tense because it was such a big decision there would be a loss, right, of an income. So we were just like, oh, like there's a hard thing to kind of accept and work through, right? When we found ourselves with no solutions. So Saturday, we're kind of deliberating. Sunday, we go to church and we're feeling the tension. And someone prophesies that morning at church and said, there's someone here who is facing a decision they need to make about work. And the Lord says, once you make that decision and let it go, I will give you rest. I'm there. I'm crying. Because I'm like, okay, like, you just answered our prayer. Like, and it confirmed it in the way that, like, we didn't tell anybody about this. So we made a decision. And then that Monday, I go into work and I give him my 2 weeks. And when I tell you it was the most controversial thing, even though this is a practice, right? When you are an at-will employee, you can willingly resign. So, oh my goodness, but it was the biggest, like, what? Because you don't leave a government job. Just like an unspoken thing. You don't leave because of the benefits and because it's so hard to get in and it's really hard to get out, So it's like people were just like, what? What do you mean? Like, what are you doing? So I put in my 2 weeks. It was kind of like, you talk about tension. There was a lot of tension there in the conversations I was having with leadership and different people, and it kind of met with opposition, but also I need to testify to the overwhelming love and grace and tenderness and comfort that the Lord provided. And something about the comfort of the Lord is not something that helps us escape our suffering, but the comfort of the Lord meets you in the suffering, right? And so as human beings, we want to avoid suffering at all costs. But what if God is calling you into a situation that will bring you somewhere he wants you to go, but you're going to experience some kind of tension there, right? So if the Lord is leading you somewhere, and when you're exiting the last place, you're feeling tension, you're feeling opposition, right? You're feeling discomfort, maybe sadness, maybe you're like low-key depressed because what am I going to do now? But I got to be obedient, right? The comfort in the suffering, like I said, it was almost like, have you ever had a weighted blanket? It was like that. It's like, yeah, outside, it's not feeling so great. But then even though I'm still in this thing, like I have this comfort that's kind of like with me, just kind of like anchoring me, holding me together, So I left that job. Then, just practically speaking, if you have children in daycare, you pay for the month in advance. And so we, I had like a couple of days before the end of the month where just to get my head on straight. And then December came, and then My youngest came out of daycare because, to be real, we weren't about to pay that because daycare was like bordering on like $1,600 a month. Okay, so we cut that out. My youngest son came home, and I was instated as the resident caretaker. You know, um, full time stay at home mom. I learned the term home management. So, like, I am in the home management industry, right? And I kind of call myself the stay at homer. That's my title, stay at homer. And, I think so. Anyway, let me get back to the story before I start reflecting, really. But December comes, and then we have the joy of the holidays, right? Like, we're just doing all the things, the hot chocolate and the and the candy canes and the baking and the cookies and the gingerbread and the presents and the snow and it was just joyful. It was like a nice respite before January came. My oldest is back to school, my husband is back to work. Like, then it was like, oh, this is real, right? So as you can see, I'm really fresh in this journey because it's the end of February, and so I've been doing this full time for what, like 2.5 months. um So in January, I decided to start homeschooling my preschooler. I have a son that's a preschool age, and I really wanted to have some structure, right? Because he's coming out of daycare, and the daycare he's in the preschool class. And, they have things that they're learning. They're not just playing all day. And I'm like, I really feel like I want to do homeschool. And I bought a homeschool curriculum. I was so anxious. I almost had I was literally in panic mode before I started the first week because I'm like, what is even all of this, right? Now, it was like the curriculum I bought is so beautiful. And now that I'm actually doing it, of course, I understand how it works. But at first, it was very overwhelming, very overwhelming. So we're now in like week 8 of homeschool, which is a beautiful thing. And it's preschool, right? So there's a lot of like exploration and reading and play, and they're still learning and work and writing and stuff like that. But it's just been, I feel a grace from the Lord to do this. And this is a part of that little dream I had hidden in my heart, that I want to be at home with my children. I want to teach them, but it felt so far away. But it took like the deteriorating of a thing for that little seed of a dream to like come back to life and be uncovered. It was almost like if it was like in the shadows, like it was like covered. And then once January of last year, rolled around and my job did all these changes, took away flexibilities, this and that, it was like that little seed kind of woke up and was like, oh, wow, I really always wanted to do this. And so I'm living in an answered prayer. And the interesting thing about living in an answer, like literally the Lord answered my prayer. It didn't happen the way I thought it was going to happen. So let's just highlight that, right? It didn't happen the way I thought it would. It didn't happen without difficulty. It didn't happen without tears. It didn't happen without loss, right? And not to say that, because every good and perfect gift is from above. The Lord gives good gifts to his children, right? That is his nature. That is who he is. That is in his word. I think that's in James chapter 1 or 2. I'll put it, I'll put the scripture somewhere. It's not to say that he gives you a gift and then he like makes it a horrible experience. It's just to say that the Lord answers your prayers, but there's still like life and humanity and just like stretching, right? Because, for me, I was made for this. And I feel that, and I'm confident about that. I was made for this, but also it's very new. And so it stretches you out of like your previous comforts, even though it's what you wanted. It may not always feel comfortable, right? It may not always feel pleasant, but it is endurable, right? It is endurable. So I don't know why I said that twice, but I feel like I needed to. So I'm here. I'm 2 months in. I'm very fresh. I will not offer any advice on homeschooling because who am I to do that? But I will testify of the goodness of God. That if you came across this video, right, maybe you can identify with this exact scenario. You left your job and you came home, and you are now a stay at homer with your child. You are now implementing some kind of homeschool or some kind of curriculum, or just, intentionally teaching your child, discipling your children, right? And you're also managing the home, the things that happen in the home, the practical everyday things, the laundry and the dishes and the dinners and the this and the that and the third. My husband does the dishes though. Shout out to you, husband. And he be cooking. And maybe that's you, right? You can identify with this, or maybe it's something else. In my last video, I was talking about transition, right? Transition and changes, times of uncertainty, right? I was talking about that in my last video. If you can identify with this, with just some big life change that is an answer prayer, or it is moving you in the direction that you really believe the Lord wants you to go, but it doesn't feel comfortable, I just want to encourage you that the Lord is good, right? I want to testify of his goodness, and I want us to remember how good he is. I want us to remember his kindness. And I just want to encourage you that even if it's uncomfortable, like, that doesn't mean it's not good. And that the Lord is faithful to teach us. Also, the Lord is faithful to comfort us and to grow us. And the Lord is merciful even in our mistakes and our mishandlings of situations. Because even for me, being a stay-at-home parent now, you are confronted with your lack of patience or understanding or grace or forgiveness, because you are always, with small children that you are trying to teach and disciple and love. But sometimes, they be testing your patience. Sometimes, you like, excuse me. Sometimes you got to take deep breaths. It's real out here in these streets. But like, in the Lord's grace and kindness, he gives you space and room to grow. And my favorite scripture right now is also in James chapter 2, being slow to speak, slow to anger, and quick to listen. I realize that I have issues with patience, and being at home is a mercy for me, because I'm now able to bring that before the Lord, and he's able to change me. And now here's another thing about my humanity highlighted, that I know I need to be dependent on the Lord to give me patience, to tame my tongue. That's also in James. I think that's in James chapter 3, about how the tongue is set on fire by hell itself. And when I tell you the quickness with which I can have a response is not always conducive to like loving and caring and being full of grace and mercy. It's a mercy to be home, because it also sharpens your character if you allow it to. If you allow the Lord to actually like highlight, hey, maybe you shouldn't have said that. Maybe you shouldn't have done that. Maybe next time you should be more patient. Remember who I am and what I've done. So, yes, I've been literally just like facing the book, reciting that verse in James chapter 2, being slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires, you know? So, yes. And my last encouragement is that, if you are in a place in your life where you know the Lord is leading you here, but you don't know 100% what to do, I'm with you, and you're not alone. If you find yourself in that place and you want prayer, or you just want to share your experience, leave it in the comments below. Let's have a dialogue. I appreciate all of you who have stuck with me and have been so patient. And just like I always say, any time you take to spend here with me is time that I am truly grateful and thankful for. So that ends our story time. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, that you can rest in the fact that the Lord sees you and he loves you and he knows what's best for you. So just surrender that will, surrender the plans, surrender all your ideas, and he will show you the best way. Allow him to search you, like it says in Psalm 139, and to know you and to know all your anxious thoughts, to see if there's anything in you, that may need to change, and for him to lead you in his way everlasting. I love you all. Thank you so much for spending time with me, and I will see you in the next one.